very good morning, wakey, from wherever you're joining us. I want to thank you so very much. I trust that you had a lovely restorative weekend and you're ready for the week. It is the 16th of January 2023 and you're back on time for Morning Prime. My name is Dibala Inair, and of course we have a good show lined up for you this morning, starting our standpoint where we talk matters politics and of course policy and where the country is headed so far. Or looking at what we've had over the weekend, big story, big ticket, of course, being the Nyanza tour and also the Rift Valley tour of the president with the cabinet ministers and also the politicians there. A lot of politicking was going on over the weekend that we'll be analyzing this morning with our panelists. And of course, projecting moving forward on how we can cushion ourselves on the high cost of living that is bound to be affecting many Kenyans. Looking, in fact, some of the dailies are saying costly bank fees will also be cascading down to home repayments. So if maybe you're servicing new loan right now, we know that the bank interest rate has risen up to 19%. We're actually back to where we were. And remember how the banks were really denying that, or they were really against the capping of the interest rate. But it seems right now we're headed towards where we were in the 20th or 25% interest rate from the bank, which is one of the most expensive interest rates in the world. We shall be looking at this with our panelists, looking at the junior secondary school as well, the Great Divide. Are we really prepared? Some of the schools are woefully prepared, or there are woefully inadequate facilities there that cannot really accommodate the junior secondary school right now. And this is where now we have the head teachers really grappling with this issue. But we shall be looking at this with our panelists as well this morning. Allow me just to drop in Kiprota Rapkirwa, who's up and early this morning, always punctual, good to, of course, as a matter of keeping time. Yes. You're spot on. Good morning, good to see you. How was the weekend?
The weekend was okay. Yeah, we are following events around the country and also enjoying the weekend as usual. Yes, I'm happy at least Kenyans are now back to work. And much of the talking in Nyanza, while the president was trying to court the people of Nyanza, he was also very persuasive and also friendly to them. Yeah, which I thought that should be the case all the time. Yes.
All right, and he made a tour of the Rift Valley as well. Yesterday in Bomet, reading a riot act for the MCs, actually the MCs of Kericho.
Well, there's been a bit of altercations among the MCAs. I remember there was some fight almost between the male and the female MCAs in Kericho. It should be the case that really leadership, discipline is very important. You can have all the attributes, but if you are not disciplined, you are likely to not to achieve much as a leader.
All right, everyone is really gagging for a position right now. The government's still shaking into place. But what does it portend for the leadership? If we have all these positions as well, will they deliver? That is what the president is really keen on, and we shall be looking at that. Let's just see what we have on the front page of the dailies today. Junior and secondary, the Great Divide is what is the splash on the front page of the Standard this morning. Transition. Head teachers are rushing to prepare facilities for the start of new term. But a visit to schools shows public primary schools have no laboratories for new curriculum and other reporting inadequate numbers of teachers, while private schools are all set. This story is on page 12 and 13 of the Standard this morning. And the debate that has been going or has been in the public domain regarding the junior secondary school and especially with the CBC is that this is bound to kill the public schools and benefit the private schools as well. And going by those remarks, looking at the headlines, that who is actually woefully inadequate to accommodate junior secondary school? Is it the private sector or the public schools? You can read all about it inside the Standard today. January the 30th, that is the date when the grade 6 learners are expected to move to junior secondary. And we have major issues here. Let me try and zoom in so that we can read together. Laboratories, public schools lack the facilities and will have to rely on secondary schools in the neighborhood. On infrastructure, members of parliament and non-committal on whether NGCDF will be used to build labs and other facilities fast enough, as there are other projects that are incomplete. Also, we have school fees. Minister of Education has not released fees guidelines for junior secondary school, throwing parents into confusion. Those are the major issues. Teachers are yet to be placed as part of preparedness to the over 24,000 public schools across the country. And this is what Collins Oyu, the NAT Secretary General, is saying. That is all about academia. On the sidebar, we have Gachagwa's gas put kingpin quest in jeopardy. Find all about it on page 10 of the Standard this morning. And talking down media, not a smart idea. This is the editorial piece today there, the opinion piece by Andrew. You can follow the story there. He may not admit, or he says he may not admit it, but what he must have realized in those low moments in their estrangement from State House is that those cast out of power need in their core not just public spiritedness, they also need independent and spirit courts, an active civil society, and media that backs loudly and bites hard. You have the story or the opinion piece on page 16 of the Standard today. We shall kick out cartels in food chain. This is what the president is promising, and that is tucked on page 6 of the Standard today. Kenyans abroad send home 500 billion shillings. This is remittances from diaspora. You can read all about it on page 25 of the Standard. Now, did the bookies give Madonga easy victory? That you have all the answers on page 38 of the Standard this morning. Also remember, today is Monday. Every Monday you have health and science coming your way. It's all about nutrients and numbers. Read all about it on inside on page 5 there, inside the health and science. Drought, we have 1,896 schools relying fully on rain harvest for water. What does that really portend with the, of course, the president right now? That is a Standard for you. Let's see what the Daily Nation is holding for us. This is what you're waking up to on the front page of the Daily Nation. The murder plot is a splash today. And the flag reads, probe. Police are investigating claims that Nelson Ndereba Njeru hired gang to kill wife. This is a bizarre tale. When Lucy Njeri Mohammed landed at Jomo Kenyatta International Airport in Nairobi last November, she did not know that the two men, ostensibly assigned by her husband to meet and drive her home, were in fact members of a killer squad that had been paid 1.5 million shillings to eliminate her, until one of them jumped into the backseat and started strangling her. This story, you have it on page 2 and 3 of the Daily Nation this morning. That is a figure there, 1.3 million shillings. That is the total amount of money Miss Mohammed reportedly paid a gang to spare her life. And their story is here. Miss Mohammed and Mr. Njeru are athletes with dozens of middle and long-distance races under the belt in careers spanning over 2 decades for the man and 1 decade for the woman. In the course of their careers, they have amassed property bought with the prize money. They got married traditionally in 2002. At that time, Njeri was 2 years into her running career with specialty in middle distances races, both locally and abroad. And you have that story continuing inside the Daily Nation this morning. Savers from land cartels victim plead with Ruto. Land fraud victims have claimed that rogue police officers are working with fraudsters in Machakos and Nairobi counties to grab private land. With police involved, they say the cartel has become a powerful pseudo-government whose actions have become bolder recently. National Intelligence Service briefs sent by the nation show that the cartels have even attracted financiers from Western nations. And you have that story tucked on page 12 of the Daily Nation this morning. Let's talk about energy. You could go to jail for failing to install solar. That is the draft energy or solar water heating regulations 2022 developed by the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority, EPRA, which requires all premises to have solar water heating system. That is on the back page of the Daily Nation. You could go to jail for failing to install solar. The draft energy solar water heating regulations 2022 developed by the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority requires all premises to have solar water heating systems. So you can have all the gritty details there on the page, on the back page of the Daily Nation today. To tell or not, dilemma for parents with HIV children. It's important to consider how the child will react and what they want to know based on the age and maturity. That story tucked here on page 8 of the Daily Nation this morning. Let's see what we have on top here. From school fees to taxes, you'll have to dig deeper into your pocket, and that is the reality about the current state of play of our economy. From school fees to taxes, you'll have to dig deeper into your pocket. And Form 1 placement results to be known today. Form 1 placements results to be known today. You can follow that on the back page of the Daily Nation this morning. And also, you have the Junior Sport that comes in handy every Monday for you inside the Daily Nation. The Star up next. Rachel, Hustler Gospel targets 1.2 million women. That is a splash today. Big dreams. It says First Lady office was allocated 260 million shillings. Plans to go big on table banking and environmental conversations. Also, relief as Red Cross distributes food in Isiolo County. And you can see a related picture here where residents are walking home after receiving relief food during a distribution exercise by Red Cross at Kipsing Village, Isiolo North, on Saturday. The food was donated by Kenya Association of Manufacturers. And on the side there, we can see ODM leader Raila Odinga and South Africa Tourism Minister. This is Lindiwe Sisulu after a meeting in Johannesburg yesterday. Also, disagreement over pay, gardeners sought after consultant Mwiti killed. Police are pursuing a gardener suspected of killing the founder of the Leadership Institute of Kenya, Dr. Gaston Kimeu Mwiti, in Nairobi on Saturday. The body of Dr. Mwiti, who was 81, was discovered in his garden after the gardener, Bernard Komu, said they had disagreed over his pay on Saturday afternoon. Police said the lifeless body was discovered in a pool of blood in his garden in the Giri Ridge with a deep cut on the back of his head. It is suspected that the assailant used a sharp object to hack the deceased. And you can follow the story on page 3 of the Star today. IBC chief to launch a poll report as the exit. The remaining IBC commissioners will today preside over the launch of 2022 post-election evaluation report, their last public function before exiting office tomorrow. Chairman Wafula Chebukati, Commissioner Professor Abdi Gulie, and Boya Mule will leave the office on January the 17th, having served the constitutional 6-year term. The trio goes in history as the first set of election chiefs to complete constitutional term in office. Let's see what we have on top here. Health Ministry on high alert over cholera outbreak. 70 so far are dead. 3,970 cases have been reported so far. Be on the lookout. Remember to wash your hands and keep tidy wherever you're living. Ruto Allies dilemma on law review. That is a splash on the front page of the People Daily this morning. It's all about the changing constitution. President has signaled he wants supreme law changed to create office of opposition leader and comply with the gender rule. But legal experts say he cannot initiate review, yet he has written to MPs to act. What options do they have? That is their abiding question. And of course, they're here. They will tell us more about it. What options do they have since the president has written to the MPs to act? You have that story on page 4 of the People Daily this morning. Was a slug out there. TZ, I should say, Boxer Madonga. Mtu Kazi works on Kenya's Wanyonyi. Tanzanian, that is Karim Madonga, made his work of Kenya's Daniel Wanyonyi in a non-titled super middleweight bout just days after much social media hype that saw boxing fans fill up KICC venue of the fight. He promised to be back in Nairobi in April for more action. The main bout was a middleweight title fight between Kenya's Rayton Okwiri and Tanzania Shabini Ndaro. Okwiri defeated Ndaro. And you can follow the story on page 28. And just going by the bites that we're having when you're looking at this particular slag out, if Mr. Kiro, you were following, of Madonga and Wanyonyi, you see, psychologically, before even the fight, You know, he really like works you psychologically to really demoralize you and put you down. So he's got another tactic there, like a Muhammad Ali. That's, you know,
Yes. Competition. You terrorize the victim.
You terrorize them before you actually go to the platform itself.
Yes.
So psychologically,
you terrorize him and you reduce him to some kind of defensive. And you see, once you are put on the defensive, it is very easy to be flawed.
Yeah. And they normally say, of course, the battle begins in the mind. That's where it is before you even get there. Sometimes you need just to visualize yourself winning. So this is what the tactics Madonga has been using, especially when he has gotten that sporting chance to be in front of our cameras to terrorize him psychologically. So when you come there, your mind is not maybe sometimes adequately prepared, or yes, to take on the slug. Let's see what we have on top here. Dunu shakes up KRA board weeks after Mudaura exit. There were changes here in the KRA board. Out is Mudaura right now. Board members whose term has been revoked, that is Charles Bakori Omanga, Richard Opembe, Mukesh Shan, Susan Mudune, and Leonard Idao. Francis Mudaura dropped as board chair in November. And in we have now board members who have been appointed by CS. That is Darshan Shah, Wilkista Simiu, Fancy To, Michael Kamau Kabiru, and Samir Ibrahim. Anthony Moura appointed board chair in November, and you can see his face there. That is the new chair. And that is how now the people daily, or the face of KRA looks, I should say, as far as the board constitution is concerned. Let's buckle down to business and see what the Business Daily is holding for us. And this is what we have on the front page of the Business Daily this morning. Costly bank charges and fees, triple home loan repayment. Lenders loading extra 20% before levying interest. Appraisals, insurance, and ledger fees hit borrowers. This is what we were talking about now, the reality on the ground with the cost of living, and this is bound to be going up and up. Electricity also will be going up and up as well. So many changes will be happening, and this is what we have on the front page of the Business Daily this morning. Commercial banks, they say here, are now loading up to an extra 20% cost on mortgages in multiple charges before they levy interest, pushing repayments to 3 times the borrowing, locking out more Kenyans from the average 9.2 million home loan. The bank's data shows interest rates from 9.2 million mortgage is priced at between 11.5% and 18.18%, with customers expected to pay almost 3 times the actual loan at maturity period of 12 years. Partly, it says, driven by other charges such as appraisal fees, insurance, ledger fees, legal fees, stamp duties, and valuation fees. And everyone is really worried. It's not just the interest rate, also the insurance. It has really gone up right now. Where is Kenya really headed? And of course, there's no any salary increment for anyone.
Yeah, it's going to really destabilize the growth of the economy, given the fact that some of the homeowners might have to lose them. And therefore, the auctioneers and repossessors will have a field day. And usually when you see in the dailies that there are many people whose properties are being sold, that's a sign of a depressed economy.
Yes.
More so given the fact that the government borrowing now is 50% from the domestic market. This therefore means that there is little money left for the ordinary people or the ordinary businessman to borrow, because it's always more attractive to lend to the government given the security that it entails. So it is likely to be a situation where we are saying we want to grow the economy, but we are taking it away from the other hand.
Indeed. Thank you so much. I just want to also rope in, I want to let him just settle down. That is Senator of Bomet, Hilary Segei. We're joined also by Senator Danson Mungatana, just to give us a current state of play. Just looking at the cost of living, bank charges, and what is happening with the current state of play of the economy. But first of all, Bomet was a center of attraction yesterday with the president being there after touring Nyanza. You can give us a feel and flavor. Senator Segei, good morning.
Good morning, Liban,
Yes.
and my senior, good morning.
Good morning to you.
Well, Indeed, it was. It was a fantastic day, I would say. For the very first time, by the way, in the history of, I'm told, public rallies in Bomet, that was the most peaceful event ever held in Bomet. And we thank the people of Bomet, I must say, for depicting great maturity and, receiving the guests in the very best of the ways. I was impressed by the sheer numbers of the people who came in to participate in the event and showing a lot of sobriety, decorum, and I would say that should be the way to go. Coming back to the conversation that you've had as regards the cost of living, it's becoming unbearable, and it is a concern that is not only in the political class, but it's cutting across. When you look at the cost of loans, for example, it's one of the things that the president the other day, I think should be 2 weeks ago, when he was giving he was giving the media briefing as to the cost of the facilities that the government or even individuals would generally expect to get from financial institutions. It's way beyond the reach of many. And one of the things, of course, that they had tried to do is to, at the lowest level, where we are looking at the people who would get the M-Shwari, Fuliza, Safaricom cost of transacting, it might look very minimal, where you told that you are charged 6-7 shillings to transact on an item between 0 and, not 0, but 500 or 1,000 and above. But it's not something to ignore. It will, first of all, completely make people not to invest towards getting housing. Remember, we are struggling to ensure that we have low-cost housing where everyone else would afford to have a decent home to live in, and at this rate, it is not going to be nice. And it's cutting across. It's not only in Kenya, by the way. I think it's a global challenge that we are experiencing at the moment, and it's largely occasioned by the cost of fuel, which is escalating by the day, and financial institutions now also seeking to still stay afloat, because you definitely have got to challenge as an investor, as an institution, yourself to ensure that you still remain in the market. When you look at the dailies, the last page is the greatest number of public auctions have been published. That tells you it is not nice at all, because if I can have between 5 to 10 pages of adverts by auctioneers where they are seeking to dispose of properties where such people have failed to repay their loans, it tells you the business world is not doing well. But I must give a rider that there is hope. All is not lost. We are looking at least rebuilding the economy. The concentration of the Kenya Kwanza government as of now is to ensure that at least the economy is improved from the lowest level, so that we can sustain, so that we can have at least the people have something in their pockets. Remember, part of what you were saying is kazi ni kazi, pesa mfukoni. That pesa mfukoni might sound a cliche, but Dibala, I can tell you, it is not, because if you do have someone with some cash from that village, all the way they can support the economy to grow and at least sustain a number of enterprises, individuals, and even the country at large. So I hope that that hope, which we are keeping it alive, will push and give us tomorrow, a better tomorrow.
A better tomorrow.
Thank you. Please.
Right, a better tomorrow. Maybe we should also look in the past, the debate around the 15, was it the 15% interest rate that everyone was, to cap it at around 12-13% of interest rate, but that was really fought vehemently by the banks. Now here we are back to where we were, maybe in the 90s and early 2000, going to 2015, 2016 there. We thought we were winning with the banks with the interest rates, but right now the capping interest was fought, and it seems we are headed back to where we were in the margin of 20-25% interest rate, Kenyans will really suffer. I know maybe with the contractual agreement that we want, that we'll have a flat rate of interest rate. How will this be affected? Because I know sometimes they normally say if everything remains the same as far as the economy is concerned. Ceteris Barubas. Danson Bungatana, good to see you. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Yeah, maybe before I also make a comment on the costs of living and the interest rates and so on, I just wanted to make a point here because I was in Siaya when the president was down there. And I just love the way everything went, you know. Our people, from what I read, are not really divided. Our people are just the same. Our people have a lot of love and respect for their leaders. I think we take a lot of blame as political leadership in the way and the manner in which we play politics. So my prayer is that going forward we'll be more issue-oriented and get away from the normal tribal balkanization that has happened in the past. And it is my prayer also that political parties will also grow up in such a way that I can stand with my brother. He is in a different political party and I'm in a different political party, and we're the same family and the same region. And we'll do the politics and the politics gets over and we are okay. That should be the case. And I loved it. Even it was very well demonstrated in Eliud Owalo's Thanksgiving. The minister was telling us in a very interesting manner. My wife is Catholic, but I belong to Nomia Church. And we are still happy and we are living in the same family. I think to me that was a demonstration that we can do politics, be on different political parties, but still have the same president, have same ministers, same country, because we don't have any other place to go. So I think that was a very beautiful demonstration of what should happen going forward. And I thank the president for the manner in which he has really gone out of his way. Kisumu, Nyanza, Homa Bay, it was beautiful. I loved it. Going back to the issues of the cost of living, I wanted to say this. At some point, we must have this conversation with financial institutions to tell us why is it that in the first world, let me call it first world, they are so regulated that their interest rates, their bank charges, and everything they do is so controlled that you don't have a bank declaring billions in terms of interest at the expense of the general community in that country. You know, we don't have, you know, the system has taken, been organized in such a way that we don't have robber barons operating under nice white and blue shirts. Let's be honest. Sometimes it's just very bad. It's so bad that we must have this conversation with them. They must tell us why is it that in some countries you are not allowed to do a loan more than 5%, even if it is a free market economy. So, yes, Kenya is a free market economy. Yes, Kenya, we want people to trade and do whatever, they make their profits. But can we look at it again? Can we leave the whole space to be to free market economy and nothing else? I think the regulator needs to come in. We need to really have a discussion, a conversation about money and the cost of money. We can't say that the cost of money should be completely free because it is becoming a bit too much. When the government is buying bonds and they are making a lot of money in the returns from the government and guaranteed returns, the people don't share those profits. The banks take those profits home alone, you know. But when it is time to assist the same people who are helping them to be rich by just taking a bit of the beating, they raise hell. They say, no, it's a free market and what and what and what. And yet they're the same people who are always buying money from the, making decisions that make credit so expensive. So for me, I'm from the viewpoint that there must be a conversation. How is it that in the first world, the cost of money, the cost of doing business with banks is controlled? But here in Kenya and in Africa as a whole, maybe with a few exceptions, you'll find that they do whatever they want. Standard Chartered, for example, the kind of profits they used to make here, you cannot compare with what they would make in Britain in terms of interest. They don't charge the same way they do here. There was that justification, oh, it's Africa, there is a bigger interest, the risk factor. But that's not true. That's not true anymore. That's not true. You do the same business here in Nairobi as you do in London. But in London, you charge the same loan, 3% interest. You come to Kenya, you charge it 15%, 30%, even 20% interest. I think we must have a conversation about the way banks are doing their business. We can't say it's just a free market and we leave it open to that. I think we really need to have these discussions. Yeah, it can't be.
We need to revisit it.
Yeah, it can't be.
As it is. And I think now the onus is with you, the parliamentarians, the legislators, as far as, broaching these issues is concerned. I don't know what will you take a Kipruto or Apkiro, because we had a sporting chance to actually rectify this and let the market now, sort of rectify itself. But the banks so far, I think they consolidated their efforts, and somehow they overplay their hands, and right now we're back to the same morass that we were in.
Well, there are a number of factors. I do appreciate what the Senator Mungatana has just said, but there are a number of factors which are almost extraneous to the management of the banks, one of which is the unstable Kenya shilling. The moment you borrowed, the way we borrowed as a country, and our loans, we pay them in dollars or in hard currencies. Anytime the hard currencies appreciate and our shilling depreciates, it means our stability internally is messed up. And this therefore means that the economy generally is likely to suffer. That is part of the challenge that we are going through as a country. And this therefore means we'll have to spend more of the Kenya shilling to be able to meet the same levels of payment to the external debt. Now, when the government also borrows heavily domestically, it squeezes out money out of the economy, and therefore it becomes unattractive for any lender to want to lend to the ordinary people, because one, there is no guarantee that I'm not likely to suffer the vagaries of non-payment or default, and therefore that is where the risk may come. Third, and also important, is the issue of the vagaries of the weather. That messes the economy. You remember this last year, we lost close to 2.5 million head of livestock. And this therefore means it is a very heavy dent on our economy, let alone the fact that we are likely to be importing maize from external sources, about 10 million bags, which is almost 20% of the national consumption. All these conspire to make our economy a bit unstable. And my worry is that it's not likely to improve for the next 2 or 3 years, because most of the loans have now matured, and therefore the repayment is likely to go higher and higher. By 2025, unless there is a miracle, it will almost be the climax of the challenge that our country is likely to be faced with, given the level of these loans. Some of the loans that we've taken in the past are really like shylocking. They do not have the normal terms that any government can negotiate. And therefore, they are likely to hit the roof and create instability internally. But all said and done, we just do hope that as we go forward, we shall have better financial discipline, not only as government, but also as the people of Kenya. Why am I talking of government? The government, once it fails to meet their requirements, like dispersal of the money to various counties, paying for certain projects, that is likely to escalate. And I remember during my time as a member of Public Accounts Committee, it had become mandatory that any budgetary provisions forms the first charge in terms of repaying pending bills. Now, as a country, we have a lot of pending bills. Those pending bills is what creates this unhealthy financial situation. Because if I do a project and I have no project whatsoever in any of the counties, and I've borrowed like 20 million to do a project that is likely to yield 5 million for me as profit and other conveniences, and that money is not paid in good time, the bank interest will go up. By the time I'm paid, I have nothing to take home. And that creates instability. And in most of the counties, that is more like the case than the exception. Yeah, that's my worry. Yeah.
All right. Hilary Segei, now, if are we really past that particular junction completely? If we were to review the interest cap, how do you go about it, you as a legislator? Do you think we need, because now we're saying we should have this conversation, but how do we take it forward? Because this is where we are, and I think it is justifiable that at least it should be reviewed. We had it at the first time, it never happened, but this was largely because of the influence of the banks.
And while I agree with you that we might need to have actually that conversation and more so deeply, you also look at the enterprises across the world. When Senator Mogatana here comments about the need to relook at that conversation, it is true. It's in law that at least there is a basic provision that required the banks to have a certain minimum interest rate chargeable on any facility that is issued out there. Well, when we also want to do it now as a legislative arm of government, several factors come into play. One of which is, of course, the need to protect the borrower. But then you also need to consider the institution, the financial institutions, because at the end of the day, remember, they're in business. They want to also stay afloat. But it is not that we cannot legislate as against regulating that sector. It has to be. The challenge would, in most cases, be what we would globally call the global market economies, and also the need to ensure that we allow the benefit of global regulatory element not controlled at the lowest level at the legislative arm, but to permit the market to drive itself. So that by the time we are saying we want to borrow from the global world, what are the best practices? What is here for us? For instance, the president and his team, the economic team, have largely given us the reasons as to why, for example, we have a very high cost of living as at now, and the struggle to protect our economic or to improve the economy. When we have no money in circulation, the purchasing power goes down. When I can't buy, you can't get any return as a business person. When I can farm, agriculture is one of the most, I would say, income generating for non-employed, the non-white collar job people. But if there is no money going down to that lowest person, we definitely lower down on our purchasing power, such that when we also then ask the financial institution to give us money at a regulated rate of 9%, we are definitely driving them out of business. When we tell them also they give us at a rate they can have as played by the market, and they talk about 15%, we can't afford to do it. So we lost in between balancing the market driving itself and also regulatory aspect which the government would want. The World Bank Global, I was reading a story about the effects post-COVID across the world in the economy, where though we have got reserves across the financial institutions where everyone else would want to maintain certain level of savings, you also would want to still run your enterprise. And they were saying that post-COVID effects is still real, not only in the financial institutions, but across the sectors in terms of the financial effect is yet to breathe. And so, as we note about the need to strictly get back, have a conversation about regulation, the market, the financial market across the world would also come so much into considering the effect of regulating availability of credit, the ability of the government of the day to stay afloat and enhance its desire to improve and enhance the economy, especially in all the sectors affecting growth of.
All right, thank you. Johnson?
I just want to pick it from where Senator Segei has left it and say that there was no guesswork about picking Professor Njuguna as the Cabinet Secretary in charge of the Treasury. We have entrusted the direction in which the money market and the balancing of these issues in the hands of a professor who has been the chief regulator as governor of Central Bank. We expect that he should take the lead in this direction. We came in, remember, in this government on the bottom-up approach, which means we are here to support the small-scale traders. That is the philosophy around this government and this administration. So, Professor Njuguna Ndungu should come up with also policies that are friendly for that general philosophy to apply. He should take the lead, because leaving it to legislators again will be too risky. He should be the person coming with figures, proposals. He should lead the discussion with the banks and come back to us with hardcore proposals that we can look at and say, okay, having had discussions and whatever from, the policymakers and the players in the market, this is the kind of thing that we need, because we don't want to come and say, okay, we are fixing the lending rate at this. Then we remove that issue of trade, that issue of balancing the economy, that issue of free market. We must have it, but we must have it with some level of protection for the common man. So my thinking is that Professor Njuguna should engage the bankers, the lenders, and should also have consultative meetings with borrowers, big borrowers and selected small borrowers, and then bring us a report. And then the relevant committees in Senate and in the National Assembly should also engage. I think this is the way forward, so that we have legislation that is going to help all of us. Not legislation that is allowing one side, the lender, to just overbear the borrower, or a legislation that is allowing the borrower to overbear the lender. But this discussion, we must have it, and the person to lead this is the CS Treasury. We have entrusted the Treasury in his hand, all the policies, and we have not made a mistake, because we know his experience and his tenure, what it meant when he was governor of the Central Bank. So we hope that he is listening wherever he is. He takes the lead, because we are not going to sit down and do nothing. We have to do something about the situation.
Yes, indeed. Something has to be done about the situation. I just want us to also highlight some of the issue that we have on the front page of the Standard, because this is bound to be affecting most of the parents today moving forward as well. That is a great divide. Head teachers are rushing to prepare facilities for the start of a new term, but a visit to schools shows public primary schools have no laboratories for new curriculum. Another reporting inadequate number of teachers, while private schools are all set. This story is on page 12 and 13 of the Standard today. Laboratories, infrastructure, school fees. Public schools lack the facilities and will have to rely on secondary schools in the neighborhood. Infrastructure. Members, it says here, if we may just put it up, that members of parliament are non-committal on whether NGCDF will be used to build labs and other facilities fast enough, as there are other projects that are incomplete. And also on school fees, Ministry of Education has not released fees guidelines for junior secondary school, throwing parents into confusion. It's only a week now remaining, so they go back to school. They open next week so far. And given this limbo that we are in, people are saying this is bound to affect the private schools mostly than the public schools. Now, not really affect but benefit the private sector than the public schools. So the public schools are bound to be affected by this. What is your take? Are we finding ourselves woefully also inadequate in terms of public schools prepared for this, or was there a tearing rush to go into CBC?
Well, there are very interesting things that I thought I would give to the menu of Professor Ndungu. First of all is to remind him that agriculture sector, if you allow me, the profit that you can make is only 16%. And therefore, any money lending that is above 16% is a serious affront on any profit that can be made in that sector. And as a way of improving productivity, we need to improve research and extension for purposes of ensuring that the information that we get from research is uptaken. I know for the last 10 years, the government has been spending less on research, and therefore that has become part of the problem that has bedeviled our society. Third, and which is very important, is to have a complete chain. When we do value addition, it should not just be value addition in emptiness. It should be value addition, and you must ask yourself, when the product leaves the farm, how does it get to the table, and how is the chain, so that we increase issues of logistics are improved, and so forth. Now back to education. I think the main problem is the way CBC was implemented. Usually, for those of us who are trained in education, there is supposed to be what we call piloting, such that if you have any program that you want to put in place, you pilot, and the mistakes that arise out of that, you are able to take remedial measures for purposes of rolling it out fully. CBC was not done that kind of piloting to understand. I remember there was a program in the 70s and even 80s called SSP, Science School Project. It was done in a number of schools, and once they realized there were certain challenges, those challenges were addressed before it was rolled out nationally. CBC should have been done the same. I remember even 844, while people may want to wish it away, is a program that the late president brought in under his leadership. And we spent so much time talking about Karakana, where we were building labs in various primary schools and other institutions. But the challenge is that the content was not properly adhered to, and sooner than later, we veered away from the original intention of 844. And that might have brought about the demise of that system, or the tactics of 844 might have, instead of looking at improving 844 in terms of content delivery and affordability, they almost ran away from it, and without asking why do we feel that 844 has not been addressing the requirements of the market. So it is not just the structures alone. It is what is the content, what are the skills that we want to impart on the children or the young learners for purposes of targeting the skills that are required in the market. So my worry is that this CBC was not thought out well at the implementation stage. Last year, when some primary school kids did the exam, CBC, the government did not come out clearly. And we expect them to come out clearly to say, are we still pursuing CBC? So that if we are pursuing it, what is it that we've done? Because Kenya Kwanza, throughout the campaigns, and I was part of them initially, we were very clear that we wanted to either tinker around with the CBC or do away with it. Now, what has happened? That we are not really clear on the way forward as far as CBC is concerned. Because we might embrace it, we might condemn it, but what have we done about the content? What have we done about the delivery in terms of teaching? What have we done about retooling the skills of the learners for purposes of ensuring that they meet the requirements of the market? Finally, what have we done about making it affordable and also convenient for many parents? Because CBC has been almost heavy on involving the parents. Have we prepared those parents to meet the requirements of their children? And what have we done about the teachers? Many of the teachers, and we interact with many of them back in the village, have not been adequately prepared for CBC. All these are a raft of issues that we need to address. I do not see Professor Munavu's findings coming out clearly on the future of CBC. It was sort of general recommendations on how education should be, but I would have expected that the main focus should have been CBC, that 1, 2, 3 should be done for purposes of addressing this challenge of CBC.
Right. Aren't you worried that we have the issue of resource sharing, especially with the laboratories, that now the primary schools, you'll have to dedicate some time to walk over maybe to the nearest secondary school for you to use the laboratories as well? How will that really work out? I think we're heading back to the days where some of the secondary schools lacked laboratories, and right now, and you could see how difficult it was by then in terms of time allocation as well. You're interfering with the calendar also of the high school. How are we finding ourselves?
Indeed, it's true. It's going to be not interesting at all. And I am aware, of course, that the working party headed by Professor Munavu, as the Honorable Kiro has said, it gave an interim report. We are expecting them to give us a comprehensive report on the 23rd of January. And looking at what they gave out, I don't expect anything much in the detailed or the comprehensive report that they're going to give us. And remember, Dibal, it is on this same day that we are expecting schools to reopen. And as it's well put, CBC rolling out is not a walk in the park. It's not going to be nice at all because of the obvious challenges. When you look at the requisites that the ministry has given out as precondition for junior schools to be domiciled in primary schools, a good number of our primary schools are not ready. They don't have, leave alone the laboratories, which is a precondition they have said, they do not have even classrooms. We would require around 48,000 classrooms across the country in primary schools for them to be capable of hosting junior secondary schools. It is not possible to have them constructed within the period that the report, the working party was set, and the reopening of the schools. That one is a fact, and it's good to be factual and also plain on it. So fully implementing the CBC is not going to be easy. Part of those requirements they've given us in the ministry's guidelines for hosting primary school, besides the laboratories, which you have just said, we don't have. My primary school, where I schooled and where I stay here now within Bomet County, both do not have laboratories. Both do not have sufficient classrooms even to host the current classes from class 1 to class 8. Now we're talking about having junior and junior secondary school being domiciled in the school. It's not going to be very easy. And they've also said that for you to host a junior secondary school, you must have a certain acreage, because they're talking about for urban, it must be 1 acre, I think. For peri-urban, it must be 4 acres. For low density institutions, that is in rural areas, must be 6 acres. And as a precondition, you must prove ownership. Remember, I think 2 years ago, the government of Kenya opted through the Ministry of Education to finance acquisition of documents of titles by education institutions. And I sit in 2 boards of a national school and a day school back in Bomet County. Both of them, and they are high schools, do not have documents of ownership. It is not going to be possible, such that when we say these are the conditions, we'll be lying to ourselves that all the institutions which we will expect them to host the junior secondary schools will have, they will not meet those conditions. And therefore, even for purposes of saying we have got to compromise in order to ensure that we have transition, that transition will not be easy. And the request that I would put across to the Minister of Education, to the Cabinet Secretary involved, and to the players within the sector is that though we're looking at ensuring that there is maximum transition, we should open up to ensure that institutions where they have infrastructure as required can host without giving these stringent conditions. But where there are primary schools where they do not have this infrastructure, it will not make sense to force such institutions to host when they will not be able to have laboratories, classrooms, and it would be very hard, Dibal, I would say, to have in the villages out there where you are graduating someone from primary to junior secondary and expecting them to learn when they do not have the infrastructure in the schools they've been put in. It will not just be fair for those learners. They will end up losing the 2-year period where they've been compelled to be confined to this primary school without infrastructure. But I would laud now only the government as regards the teaching, the teacher. Because remember, we've been told, and they've actually, I think the interviews are starting tomorrow almost across the country for the recruitment of the 35,000 teachers. That alone is, I've seen as the major and the most positive step that has been taken to ensure that these institutions, these schools at least are provided with the teachers. As to their preparedness, it's a different story, because those who've been in classroom teaching will obviously be capable of transitioning and running the programs because they have been taken through relevant training in order to make sure that at least the programs are able to run. But now we have a new team that is being employed and expected to immediately roll out programs and run and teach. That will be the only, I would say, challenge. But the presence in itself of qualified teachers being employed, 35,000 across the country, will easen the burden and the inefficiency that I am foreseeing with the implementation of the CBC. I would say it was largely rushed, and that is one of the reasons as to why the government said we need to look at it. We set up a working party, but its implementation, even to me, is still one of those things I'm dicey about.
Right, thank you. Thank you. Well, we are up for a station break right now. It is 7 o'clock on the nose. When we circle back, we shall hear from Danson Mungatanat as well. Remember, today, the IBC is bound to be, of course, releasing their post-election analysis report just to evaluate how we fared on the 2022 general election and the raft of issues that are bound to come out from there. And we also center our focus on IBC itself, given to understand the chairman, and, of course, the 2 other commissioners will be now retiring from office. What is the state of affairs of IBC moving forward? The selection pattern also is bound to be